One of the most important things in an operator's kit is the secondary gadgets they have at their disposal. This is because as time has gone on, secondary gadgets have gotten stronger and stronger, which has switched up the meta, resulting in them being more important than ever before. Because of this, knowing the best secondary gadgets is vital for any player to understand to be successful. So in today's video, I'll be ranking every secondary gadget from worst to best. We'll begin at number 15 being the worst, and we will work our way up to the number 1 spot. Keep in mind, every secondary gadget on this list is useful under the right circumstances. So the entire video is obviously going to be my opinion, and your list will likely be different from mine. Anyways, now that I've gotten that out of the way, let's go ahead and get into the video. Now, coming in at the 15th spot, we have our first attacker secondary gadget, and that is breaching charges. I think breaching charges are the worst secondary gadget in the game by far. And the reason for this is because the only thing they do for you is open soft surfaces, which on attack is very simple. There are so many gadgets that can do this job for you. For example, Buck, Sledge, Sophia, Ash, and pretty much any other operator with a secondary shotgun can do exactly what breaching charges do. And they can do it while being less vulnerable. The biggest issue with breaching charges is that when you go to use them to open a soft surface, you leave yourself vulnerable for an extended period of time, and you make a loud audio cue, allowing for an opponent to shoot you through the surface you're opening. This makes the situations where you can get away with using breaching charges quite slim. Also, since there are so many other ways to open the same surfaces that breaching charge open, it makes them a secondary gadget that you very rarely want to run over any other option. Now, coming in at the 14th spot, we have our first secondary gadget on the defensive side, and that is observation blockers. Observation blockers are the newest introduction to Rainbow Six Siege, and honestly, they are not that strong. What observation blockers do is when you place them on the ground, they will create a transparent wall that you can see through, but attacker cameras and attacker drones can't see through. The main use cases for these gadgets is to cut off the lines of sight for the attacker's drones, making it easier for you to get away with ratting in certain positions and to make it harder for the attackers to drone rooms effectively. Every defender that has access to observation blockers gets 3 of them, meaning that you can cover a decent amount of the area inside the bomb site or wherever you end up deciding to put these blockers. However, observation blockers have a couple of downsides. The first of which is that they take a while to set up. Since defenders get 3 of them, it can actually take up a large amount of their prep phase time to actually set all of them up. And then on top of all of that, they're very easy to counter. All the attackers realistically have to do is put 1 bullet into them, or send a Twitch drone into the bomb site to get rid of them, or to use any form of EMPs to get rid of them, and then they're basically taken out of the equation. So considering that observation blockers are easily countered, and the situations where they are useful are quite slim, I think they have to go down here in the 14th spot. Now, moving on to the 13th spot, we have claymores. Claymores find themselves this low on this list for one main reason, and that is that they only are strong for one use case, and that is dealing with runouts. Runouts in Rainbow Six Siege, especially in the current meta, are a real problem. And placing a claymore under a window or in front of a doorway can give you a free pick on a defender that's trying to get aggressive onto you. However, if you don't put claymores on a runout, they are extremely obvious. This makes them very easy to spot in most situations, so roamers will very rarely die to these, and they will very rarely get you kills outside of the situations where you're using them to prevent runouts. So because they aren't extremely versatile, I did put them pretty low on this list, but keep in mind they are extremely strong for dealing with runouts if you need that in your kit. Now, moving on to the 12th spot, we have another attacker secondary gadget, and that is secondary hard breach charges. Secondary hard breach charges, just like claymores, are extremely strong for one use case, and that is for getting hatches open. Because one secondary hard breach charge can destroy an entire hatch, they can be extremely useful on bomb sites where there are a lot of hatches, and they can honestly replace the role of a Habana in most situations. However, where secondary hard breach charges start to fall off is in their wall opening capabilities. Because of the fact that secondary hard breach charges can only open a vaultable or crouchable hole, they are very hard to use effectively on a wall. You can use 2 of them together to make a bigger hole on a wall, but just like normal breaching charges, this will leave you vulnerable because you have to place them down on the wall for an extended period of time, and because of the fact that their detonation time is so long, a defender can very easily bandit trick or cade trick them off of a wall. So the situations where you can use a hard breach charge to get a wall open are few and far between, and for that reason, I'm going to be putting them somewhat low on this list in the 12th spot. Now, move past secondary hard breach charges. In the number 12 spot, we have the bulletproof camera coming in at the 11th spot. This may be somewhat low on this list, but I think this is the first secondary gadget that is extremely strong. Bulletproof cameras can provide your team with a ton of utility if you place them in the right position, and because of the fact they're bulletproof, they can actually stay alive for a decent portion of the round. To counter bulletproof cameras, the attack are forced to either use explosives to get rid of it, or they have to walk up close to the camera and shoot it from the side. This can be very difficult depending on where you position it in the map, so a lot of the time the attackers will have to waste some form of explosive utility to get rid of it. However, since all the other secondary gadgets throughout this video are extremely strong, I think the bulletproof camera has to go to this point on this list despite its strength. Now moving on to the number 10 spot, we have proximity alarms. And the reason why proximity alarms are going to be coming this high on this list is because of the fact that they can provide you with round saving utility. You can place proximity alarms above a doorway or on a staircase, and when the attack walks into the radius of the proximity alarm, you'll get a loud audio cue, which will prevent any sort of rush strategies or sneaky plays that the attack tries to pull off. However, proximity alarms do have one downside, and that is the fact that one bullet can take them out. But the reason why this doesn't affect proximity alarms that much is because of the fact that if the attackers can shoot your proximity alarm, they've most likely already set it off, which means that you've already gathered the intel you needed out of that proximity alarm anyway. And with barbed wire being on such few operators, proximity alarms can function as a good alternative to them if you don't have barbed wire in your operators' kits. Now coming in at the number 9 spot, we have the GON 6. Now I debated whether I should put the GON 6 in this video, but I know a lot of people would be disappointed if I didn't put it on this list somewhere. I know the GON 6 isn't technically a secondary gadget, it's classified as a secondary weapon, but it still functions as secondary utility that an attacker can bring. Now if you don't know what the GON 6 is, the GON 6 is a secondary hand cannon that can be used to destroy any form of defender bulletproof utility. Having a secondary weapon that can allow you to destroy a piece of important utility is extremely strong. Dealing with bulletproof utility is one of the most important things that you can do as an attacker. But the reason why the GON 6 isn't going higher on this list is because it takes up that secondary weapon slot, which that secondary weapon slot could be used for something like a secondary SMG or a secondary shotgun, depending on the operator you're running. So because the GON 6, unlike other secondary gadgets in this video, takes up that secondary weapon slot, I am going to be putting it in the 9th spot. Now moving past the GON 6 in the 9th spot, we have the recently nerfed impact grenades coming in at the 8th spot. In previous lists that I've made about secondary gadgets, impact grenades would have been much higher on this list, but with the recent nerf to their radius, it makes it a lot harder to pull off impact tricks. If you didn't know, before impacts got nerfed, you used to be able to use impacts to deny wall breaching utility. So if Thermite went to go breach a wall, you could shoot a hole above the wall that he's trying to breach and then throw an impact on the top of the wall, and it would destroy the Thermite charge, stopping Thermite from getting the wall open. However, now with the radius of impacts reduced, it's now basically impossible to pull off an impact trick effectively. This combined with the fact that impact grenades no longer deal as much damage makes them extremely hard to use against shield operators as a solid counter. So impact grenades only really function now as a way to make rotations for your team or to make vertical holes in a pinch on the defense. So because of the fact that their two main use cases, denying shield operators and impact tricking, has been completely removed, they have to go lower on this list. But their ability to make rotates is strong if you don't have a shotgun on your team, so that's why they're not going super low on this list either. Now moving past impact grenades, we have smoke grenades coming in at the 7th spot. Smoke grenades on attack are extremely strong for reasons I've mentioned multiple times throughout all of my videos. They can cover a line of sight for your team to allow you to go for a push, they can cover a plant for your team, and they can be used early in a round to pull off a rush strategy. And since Warden isn't picked nearly as often as he used to be, they are a lot more useful than they once were. So because of that, I did move smoke grenades up a little bit to the 7th position. Now coming in at the number 6 spot, we have another attacking secondary gadget, and that is impact EMPs. Impact EMPs have shifted the meta a lot over the years, and that is because they can function as a makeshift replacement for Thatcher. You can use impact EMPs to deal with a cage charge on a hatch, or to deal with any sort of electronic utility on a reinforced wall, which can support your hard breacher. And since they can somewhat do the role of Thatcher, that frees up another operator slot for your team to pick someone else that might be more useful. Now, impact EMPs do have the downside of having a really small radius and their effects not lasting very long, but since you get 2 of them, as long as you play it right, you should be able to at least get one hatch or one wall open if you use your impact EMPs correctly. Now, moving on to the number 5 spot, we have another recently nerfed secondary gadget, that being frag grenades. If you don't know, Ubisoft recently removed the ability for you to cook frag grenades, meaning that you can no longer use them in conjunction with a drone to get a free kill on a defender from below. This used to be an extremely strong and prevalent strategy that made grenades one of the strongest, if not the strongest secondary gadget in the game. However, with that ability being removed, grenades now function as a way to kind of denial bulletproof utility from the defense and as a method to force a defender out of a position. You very rarely will get kills with grenades now because of the fact that you can't cook them anymore. They're still one of the strongest secondary gadgets on the attack, and on my list today they're coming in as the second best attacking secondary gadget, but they just aren't overpowered like they used to be. Now moving on to the fourth position, we have a defense secondary gadget, that being the nitro cell. The nitro cell is strong for reasons that are quite obvious. First of all, they can be used in conjunction with your gadgets to get free kills from below, and second of all, they can be used to deny a plant later in the round. Both of these use cases are extremely strong. Getting a picking siege is obviously extremely huge, and one from below where you don't have to take any potential damage is huge. However, nitro cells have one downside, and that downside is the fact that their projectile speed is very slow, meaning that when you throw them, they go through the air very slowly, giving the attackers the opportunity to shoot them out of the air and deny your utility altogether. This happens more often than you think, so because of that, I did decide to put the nitro cell in the fourth position, but don't get me wrong, it's one of the strongest secondary gadgets in the game. It's just the next three options are so competitive that I didn't think the nitro cell could hold up in comparison. Now moving past the nitro cell in the fourth spot, we have the final attacking secondary gadget coming in at the third spot, and that is flashbangs. Flashbangs have always been extremely strong in Siege, and that's for a couple of reasons. First of all, flashbangs can be used to burn ADSs or to deal with mine magnets, so that way you can get other utility into the bomb site. This can be yin candelas, smoke grenades, capital firebolts, it doesn't matter. But flashbangs can mainly function as a way for you to get other utility onto positions that you need them to be in. This combined with the fact that flashbangs have a pretty strong use case outside of just burning ADSs, which is the fact that they can blind defenders and potentially allow you to get a free kill, makes flashbangs one of the most versatile secondary gadgets the attack has to offer. And because of the fact that they are so versatile, I did have to put them at the number 3 spot. Now coming in at the number 2 spot, we have another defending secondary gadget, that being barbed wire. Barbed wire finds itself in the number 2 position in this list simply for the fact that without it, the game would be in a completely different position. Without barbed wire, attackers would be able to get way more aggressive onto the defense, because if an attacker runs into barbed wire on a staircase or a doorway, it basically forces them to slow down and deal with that utility, because trying to walk through barbed wire as an attacker makes you extremely vulnerable. You make a loud audio cue, you walk extremely slowly, and your screen moves a little bit, so trying to push through it is basically not an option. But destroying barbed wire is even a louder task, because meleeing it twice makes an even louder audio cue to any defenders nearby, and using explosive utility to get rid of it obviously will make a loud audio cue as well. This makes barbed wire basically just proximity alarms on steroids, because if the attackers run through barbed wire, they get slowed and make noise, and if they stop and deal with the barbed wire, they're slowed down and they make noise. So either way, barbed wire stops an attacker in their tracks, and it forces them to slow down, which can stop a potential rush strategy that the attackers were thinking of doing. This is why we've been seeing barbed wire on less and less operators, because of how strong of a secondary gadget it is. But not even barbed wire can compare to the next secondary gadget on this list, which just so happens to be the deployable shield. Now, the deployable shield being at the number 1 spot, I don't think any of you will be surprised by. The deployable shield has changed the way the defense plays the game. Almost every bomb site setup in Rainbow Six Siege requires a deployable shield at some position in the map. Deployable shields are so important to the defense that most rounds can be dictated by whether or not the attackers kill a player behind a deployable shield and how quickly they do it. This is also why operators have been losing deployable shields over the past few years, just like barbed wire, because they're an extremely strong utility that Ubisoft cannot afford to give to good operators. This is why Smoke recently lost his deployable shield, because with it, it made him basically an unstoppable powerhouse. Anyways, that about wraps up today's video. Let me know if you agree or disagree with this list in the comments down below. I'd love to hear your opinion. If you enjoyed today's video, I make Siege content just like this twice a week, so go subscribe to the channel and follow me on Twitter if you don't want to miss the next upload. If you want to watch another video just like this one, I'll be popping up on your screen right now that I'm sure you'll enjoy. I'll see you next time, friends, and peace.